Thank you again. It's my pleasure to be here with a great panel. My name is Manoj Saxena. We're going to be covering with Lori Beer, who's the global CIO for JP Morgan, and Akshaya Bhargava, who is now the founder and chairman of an exciting fintech startup in London called Bridgeweave. He was the former CEO of Barclays Wealth. We're going to be covering with you the state of artificial intelligence today in financial services. And I'll do introductions of both of the speakers in a little bit. But I'm going to spend about 10 minutes setting the stage on where we see AI today in the enterprise, and then dig into kind of specific experiences of Lori and Akshaya driving this. So let me start sort of with some context setting. And what is clear now is that AI has now become the frontier for digital innovation. Mobile used to be the frontier last year. Before that, it should be the web. And when you go into conversations with customers and CEOs today, it's primarily around this notion of when they say I'm doing digital, they start discussing, how do I do AI as a part of my digital efforts? And these statements from Satya Nadella and Google and IBM CEOs sort of make that point. I thought Sundar Pichai's statement that AI is going to be as transformative to humanity as fire and electricity was, I thought was quite a bold statement. And I do believe, I think over time that will happen. And we are beginning to see that shift in the market already. So when I look at AI today, I sort of see two things happening. I say AI today is both artificially inflated, and AI today also stands for amazing innovations. I had the honor of running IBM Watson as the first general manager. When IBM won the Jeopardy game, they had to commercialize. They put a lot of money into it. In fact, that was the first time that Lori and I got partnering. She was one of my first customer partners at Anthem WellPoint, which is one of the largest health insurance companies in the US. And we've been collecting scar tissue since then of taking this smart technology and making society and businesses richer with it. So I see there are these two narratives going on right now in parallel, because there's a lot of misperceptions and hype about AI. I have said this many times, that AI is too important to be left to the technologists alone. AI is a strategic business capabilities that the CEOs and boards need to really understand and start putting that to work. And here are some of the misperceptions I see about it. Number one, there's a perception that either AI is going to kill me or it's going to take my job away. Right? And a lot of that is happening because the narrative for AI is being written by Hollywood. Okay? And a lot of it is happening because the alarmists are talking about how the job's going to now disappear. Every new technology for the last 100 years, from the steam engine to the looms to the semiconductors, have dislocated jobs. AI won't be any different. There will be 8 million jobs, 10 million jobs, various predictions over the next 5 years that will be dislocated. But the opportunity for not just automating a job away, but the opportunity for augmenting a job are way bigger than just automating a job away. People talk about the 8 million jobs that are going to be lost, but they don't talk about the 1.2 billion jobs that can be enhanced with AI. And that's why at CognitiveScale, we talk about it as augmented intelligence, not just as automated intelligence or artificial intelligence. The second part that I hear as a misperception is big data analytics as AI. Okay? And the analogy I use there is just because I can sense more doesn't make me smarter. I can feed more senses into my body, but that doesn't make my brain go smarter. And these are components to drive. Data is the fuel that drives AI, but that is just one component of it. The other one, natural language processing, machine learning, and deep learning are AI. Right? These are just components, again. It's like saying a clutch or a steering wheel or a car seat is a car. These are piece parts that make up an AI system. The other one, robotic process automation, is AI. First of all, there are a lot of robotic process automation companies that are old school rules company that are now everyone's an AI company. But those that are applying deep learning and machine learning to AI, they're only addressing that automation part of the continuum, not the augmentation part. And they're applying it for routine tasks, not for complex decision-based tasks. The other big thing that I see is that data science platforms alone can solve the problems. Oh, I got TensorFlow. Anyone who says, I'm doing a big data lake and I'm building a TensorFlow model, like, and I go like that, saying never going to make it. Right? Because you're starting bottom up. You're starting grabbing data, building models. A model is too brittle. It's an important piece, but it's too brittle to be able to put that into production in a business system, in a business application. It's like saying I've got a great clutch box and I have dreams of winning a Formula 1 race. It's just a component, right? So how do you put the whole car together, the whole team together? And we'll be discussing that in the panel a little bit. And the last part is that enterprise AI can be a black box. 99.9% of AI companies today are not enterprise ready. Their AI is not explainable in terms of evidence, in terms of accountability, in terms of bias, in terms of fairness. And one of the big shifts, if you look at AI in the B2B area, is to be able to make it explainable. People like Lori and Akshaya would never touch an AI system. It's one thing to say it's a dog or a cat because my RNN or my DNN said that. Another thing to say, I denied a claim, the patient died, I'm being sued for $40 million, and I can't tell you why my AI told me to do it. Right? So when you take the enterprise AI perspective, there is a whole set of capabilities and a whole set of misperceptions that have to be dispelled. And we'll talk more about it as Akshaya and Lori talk about their experiences. So this is probably the single most important slide in my deck, which is what exactly is it that AI does for the enterprise? It's very simple. It does three things. It lets you reason across all available information. So far, we can reason only across numbers and text. Now I can look at an image. I can point a camera to the projector and say, who's the manufacturer of that? I can kind of do a building and say, who's the architect? Because images, audio, video now can all be made processable. So number one, AI helps you reason across all available information. Number two, it can help you create prescriptive insights for taking action. I call it the Iron Man Jarvis suit. It's building everyone's individual Iron Man Jarvis suit. And then third, it learns continuously. If a system does not learn, it's not AI. It's that simple. AI systems are feedback-driven systems. And if it has no learning loop, it is not an AI. So what AI has done has gone through this evolution. I call it from, it's a term that someone else's term that I've borrowed, academics to economics. When I was running IBM Watson, people thought AI was about natural language processing. That's what we did for Jeopardy. Then it became, oh, it's about devices like Alexa. Then we said, no, it's about chatbots. Then we said, no, it's actually about machine learning toolkits. Now we are saying, oh, it's about robotic process automation. In the end, it is about building an intelligent digital business. Just like there are self-driving cars and assisted cars, there will be self-driving businesses. So how do you take a business process and cognitize it? 25 years ago, when the web came about, you webified a business process. Now with AI, you're going to cognitize the business process. It's going to make it self-learning and self-driving. So how do these categories fit together? Number one, you got business intelligence. Then you got big data analytics, and then machine learning that looks at patterns. Then you got robotic automation. And then finally, you have augmented intelligence, which builds intelligent processes that pairs humans and machines. That is sort of a simple way to understand the different categories of players, all of them working off of data and driving insights and actions and learning off of it. So there are three key requirements that of the 600 or 800 customers that I've talked to over the last 5 years that I put down their requirements into these three buckets. Number one, they want performance. They want business outcomes from an AI. Number two, they want assurance. They want to make sure that this thing is not going to go rogue on me. Cambridge Analytica and Facebook is just the beginning of a whole new class of issues the industry is going to have to deal with around bias, explainability, fairness, and trust in AI. And they want their AI to be able to reflect their core values and the company values and policy in it. And number three, they want to be able to scale it. Today, AI is built as machine learning models only to 5% of your audience, which are the data scientists. As one CEO said to me, the juice is not worth the squeeze. It just takes too much effort. Right? So how do you democratize? How do you build a blender that kind of lets you create juices for the masses? And that's sort of what we do at CognitiveScale with it. And then we look at financial services. Every process which has information and signals from text to documents and images and audio is going to be transformed with AI. From risk and compliance to customer engagement to market and asset intelligence. And every one of them will need more and more powerful reasoning engines and learning engines. And there are very clear benefits. So one of the big things that I've seen that companies that are successful with AI are people who look at business outcomes and they implement processes and projects in 90-day increments and not start with data and model building up. So I've got a quick video here. Let's see if we can get the audio.
Play and live. But that enormous potential won't be realized unless people and businesses feel safe about integrating human intelligence with machine intelligence to solve complex problems. In addition to enhanced business outcomes that AI delivers, enterprises across the globe also want AI that ensures data rights, explainability, transparency, and governance. We call this responsible AI. Driven by our vision that AI will augment human cognitive abilities, we are dedicated to building AI software that embraces responsible AI principles to improve healthcare, inclusion, education, and economic opportunity, leading towards a healthier and better future. We are announcing 4 initiatives to support this mission, the first of which is the launch of an open app store for AI with over 2,000 high-value AI building blocks in collaboration with AI Global. This AI Global marketplace will be built on open specifications and will enable software developers, data scientists, AI researchers, and product managers to innovate at a faster pace with AI. The second initiative is the release of open specifications that speeds up the design of responsible AI systems and eliminates vendor lock-in. In collaboration with AI Global, CognitiveScale is announcing the Open Cognitive Agent Modeling and Execution Language, CAML. It is aligned with IEEE 7000 standards and leverages deep learning model exchange standards such as ONNX, the Open Neural Network Exchange. Responsible AI starts with the responsible use of client.
Anyway, so with that, let me just sort of do a quick introduction of our panel, and we'll get into a Q&A. And for those of you that want to go deeper into additional questions, there is a breakout session right after this in a smaller room, and we'll be glad to take your questions. So quick introduction on 2 of the, I think, preeminent executives that I've had the opportunity to work with in my career. One of my favorite sayings is, vision without execution is hallucination. The thing I find about Lori and Akshaya are these are incredible executives who understand, who get it at a vision level, but they have what I call as tactical vision. They know how to start converting the power of a technology into projects and programs in 90-day increments, 120-day increments and all. And then they have the courage to be able to lean in and start taking their organizations into it. So we are really sort of fortunate to have Lori and Akshaya with us for the next 20 minutes or so, and I'll be asking a few questions of them, and later on, hopefully, we'll follow up with you all. So Lori, let me start with you. I mean, you obviously have a very big mission at JP Morgan. I think your IT budget is like, what, 11 billion, 10.8 billion a year?
10.8 billion.
So that's more than the revenue of many companies. So when you look at AI, now let's start with the basics. I mean, how do you define AI?
Yeah, I think it's really important for us, even just to get, so across the 10.8 billion we spend, we have 50,000 technologists that work for JP Morgan Chase, delivering for our customers, for our business. And so part of it is even making sure everyone understands when we talk about AI, what it actually means. Manoj teed it up earlier, but for us it really means how can we make more intelligent processes, business processes, leveraging some of the characteristics we have traditionally seen humans do. And if you think about financial services, we've been using algorithms, even machine learning, for long periods of time. And so when we think about AI, it literally is about how does it help transform our business? We are in this age of acceleration. The digitization, why do we spend $10.8 billion in tech and have 20% of our staff inside a bank as technologists? Because our business, our products and services, how we deliver our customer experience is all about technology enabling the business to deliver that. And so when we think about it, it's how can we drive that next level of innovation in this age of acceleration? We know as we digitize, we start seeing disruption. And across whether you're looking at our retail businesses or wholesale businesses, we're starting to see a lot of digitization across the value chain. And so for us, it's incredibly important that as we think about those next generation personalized, how can you do deep personalization at scale on a customer experience is incredibly important. Also, how can we look for new ways to serve clients, which ultimately generates new and different sources of revenue. And frankly, it allows us to, as we're making these smart business processes, allowing us to reimagine them, not just incrementally improving them, but sort of reimagining them. So I think those are some of the characteristics I would describe.
That's wonderful. Now, Akshaya, you have the unique perspective of having been the CEO of Barclays Wealth and Investments, and now you're doing your own startup in the fintech space around I think you call it next generation asset intelligence. Tell us a little bit about how you view AI, both from your current company's perspective as well as when you were running Barclays.
You know, I think it was Voltaire who said that there is no power on earth that can stop an idea whose time has come. I feel about AI a little bit like that. You know, that may be overstating the point a little bit, but I think it's a compelling idea. There are a number of enabling factors that are there. Cloud, you know, ability to handle big data, ability to handle distributed computing, you know, the mobile revolution that everybody sort of wants. So these, I see this as enabling technologies. Without some of these things, you couldn't use AI so much. The reason I get excited about AI, and I think it's genuinely a big deal, is because I agree with Laurie on everything she said. But you know, the reason I left Barclays to set up Bridgeweave was I believe AI gives me the ability to do things that have not been possible before. And that's what I want to do. And that is not the only possibility that AI brings, but it is one of the more exciting ones.
So let's continue with that. So where do you think in financial services AI will have the most impact in the next 3 to 5 years? I don't want to talk about sentient and man-machine becoming one and leave it to the Hollywood scriptwriters. Where do you think in the next 3 to 5 years we'll see massive uptake and impact from AI in financial services?
So Laurie used the word reimagining, and I think it is where people start not only improving process or improving fraud detection, improving sanction management, improving compliance, it is where you reimagine the process. And should it exist? Should something else exist entirely? And when you get to the business level, when you start reimagining products, how do you bring products that have not existed before? How do you create customer experiences that have not existed before? And I think that's the point. It gives you the ability to completely reimagine something. Now, of course, all of us are victims of our own careers. We are familiar with what we are familiar with. So we tend to get trapped in old thinking. But every so often you come across a situation where somebody's thought of something new, and that's really exciting.
So what particular processes or products, can I make it more specific, do you think, Laurie, that AI will start having impact?
So when I kind of go back to where we see new value, new innovation getting created on the customer experience, that's just one example. So we see this deep personalization that a lot of the digital natives have sort of driven and has become a consumer expectation. And that's certainly come into financial services as well on the retail consumer side. The other thing is, and you can imagine, as on the retail side, we spend a lot in sales and marketing, but being able to get really targeted about where those experiences make a lot of sense. Also thinking about how to connect across, our brand is Chase in the United States, so a one Chase customer, whether they're buying a credit card from us or whether we're at their bank, auto loan, home loan, whatever products and services they buy, that deep integration, that deep personalization, what's relevant to me. Now, what's interesting is that's translating into the wholesale business. So we have this platform called JP Morgan Markets, where many people come and get news and research and latest information. And now on the wholesale side, our clients want a very personalized experience there. And part of it is because so much information, so much research, so much knowledge is getting created to be able to cut through that and make it really relevant. So this goes back to the notion of being able to drive that personalization at scale. And then when I think about risk management, huge opportunity for us. So you can imagine, think about the size and scale, and this goes to the scale comments that Manoj brought up. We process $5 trillion a day. $5 trillion. So if you think about a payments ecosystem, for us, we process all 20% of all US dollar on a daily basis across the globe. So when you think about that, you have to worry about any money laundering capabilities. You have to worry about fraud. You have to worry about sanctions, if someone's on the sanctions list. And for all those processes, we've always used algorithms to sort of help us get to where are the potential bad guys, where are the high-risk anomalies. With applying AI on top of that, we can really transform the process and think about it differently. So how do you reduce the white noise? So this is an example in those processes where you can actually take the algorithms we've historically built add more intelligence, and instead of our resources going through just to identify, no, it really isn't a true hit, it's a false positive, we can have them focus on higher order capabilities. I also would say, as we think about, the vast amounts of data that we have, how can I help a trader price more efficiently for a client at speed and scale? When you think about the 1.8 trillion securities we process on a daily basis. So that scale issue is incredibly important to us. And the other thing that surrounds all of this is we've always believed strongly, ours is a business of trust. So we've always felt strongly about the data security, data privacy, data protection. Now we have to also think about data use, data ethics. So really wrapping the solutions around that. And that goes back to being able to have those capabilities at scale. But those are some examples of the real use cases for us.
That's very, very helpful. So Akshaya, you're talking about reimagining products and processes. What is the kind of process or product you're reimagining now? Can you tell us anything about it?
So Bridgeweave, as you said, is in a generic sense about the next generation asset intelligence. And our first application is the retail investor. So we're not a robo-advisor. We don't give advice. But we produce hyper-personalized investment insights that use market data, use proprietary machine learning algorithms to produce insights that are tailored to an individual's portfolio. If you really go back and look at a hedge fund manager, for instance, they have a ton of information that they subscribe to. They have a bunch of really smart quantitative analysts, people sitting there producing all kinds of analytics for the hedge fund manager to make a decision on. If you're an individual, what do? You go to Bloomberg, you go to CNBC, you subscribe to FT, you read the Investors Chronicle. If you're so minded, you have a couple of spreadsheets that you make and you build your own models, and you do the best you can. The information imbalance between the individual and the institution is huge. That's what we're trying to correct. And we want to take quantitative analytics, quantitative information on markets, and we really want to democratize it by making it available to everyone in an incredibly easy to understand, incredibly easy to use, and an incredibly affordable way.
It's fantastic. That's great. So Lori, let me kind of, going back to the comment about everyone now says is an AI vendor, and I see this common pattern. It's the thing about if you have a hammer in hand, everything looks like a nail, right? I got a deep learning model, and I'm not going to look for a solution. What, in your assessment, are low-hanging fruits in terms of applications of AI, and what do you think are areas where AI actually is not relevant or not as important?
Yeah, so I think we talked about some of the examples. By the way, some of the other examples that I would mention is how do we prepare our employees? We talk a lot about, there's always the concern about job loss when we talk about this topic, but how do we prepare our employees for the jobs of the future? So one of the things, again, to try to prepare our employees to keep up with the speed that's happening in the technology ecosystem in the landscape is how do we intelligently enable the processes they intersect with? And a good example of this is in the cybersecurity space. So within that 10.8 billion budget, we actually spend over 700 million alone in cybersecurity. And this is a space that is incredibly important. How do we allow our cyber experts to stay on top of the leading threats, whether they're insider threats or external threats? And so that's an example, I would say, that there's, again, an additional opportunity. How do we help we have a huge technology estate that we have to manage. Where are we most likely to see or be able to predict where the next problem's going to occur? So system availability is key for us. But how can we use intelligence even to help our technologists or employees inside the bank do their job even more effectively? So I think those are some of the low-hanging use cases because we can even try it a little bit on the inside and create value. Now, where we haven't seen as good a success, I think we all know that a key to enable an effective AI is data. And so if you think about the vast amounts of data that we have, in some cases, we have great data that's been labeled very well, that it can very much feed a machine learning model, much less a deep learning model, which may require even more assets of data. So there's some pockets where we don't have the density of data. We don't necessarily have the breadth of data that we need. That may not be a good use case. But also, if we find the right balance, the complementary capabilities that AI can add to some of our processes, making them more intelligent, being able to scale vast amounts of data quickly and identify those anomalies with the intuition, the intent, the empathy that a human decision has to come into a process. That's, I think, those are the areas where we've not seen as much applicability.
That's very helpful. So let me actually go deeper into this people and the culture aspect of it. So how do you see, what do you think is the best way to bring an organization along? Because it's technology that is so misunderstood, right? On one hand, there's excitement. On the other hand, there is science projects, right? And then you got all this sort of responsibility, if you may, to lead the organization forward. What are the 2 or 3 things that you focus on to kind of convert the potential into the real sort of impact? How do you take the organization along?
We've really been on this journey because you don't want to squelch the innovation and the proof of concept. So we have many proof of concepts going on. I would say internally, as I think where we are in our own maturity, we're kind of in the startup mode going to scaling it up. First of all is making sure that the decisions we're making around applying technology, and AI is no different than other innovations we've seen in technology, is business outcome driven. That we actually have, so I sit on the firm's operating committee. It's Jamie and 10 of us that sit on the operating committee. I have an innovation session with them every month, educating them about the emerging technologies, where things are going, how it could affect our business. And so when we make decisions around, we're moving to a model where we have that governance around what are the right use cases so that the business leaders are on board. And the steering committee is governed by a business leader helping drive this. So you may have seen that we have hired Manuela Veloso, who's coming out of Carnegie Mellon, to help us think about the research aspect. There are some very complicated use cases, for example, in the market space that maybe the model hasn't been created yet. But we do think that's just a small set of capabilities we need inside. But even more importantly, how do we connect into the ecosystem? So that's one set of capabilities you really got to think about. How do you extend into the research, the public-private partnership? That's one. And that includes our regulators as well. We have many regulators. That payments business I talked about, there's 200 regulators that regulate that business. How do we work hand in hand with our regulators to help understand these issues of explainability and bias in the data and privacy, how we take those issues forward, and we really need to partner on that. So that's an important element that you have to really consider. Then how do you think about, there's so much open source and technology and capability available, but I have to have common design patterns and frameworks and standards that we need to adhere to so that I can make sure all the rules and those data privacy, all those issues, cybersecurity, are getting adhered to. So there's another layer. And then how do I unleash the power? And so taking those individual use cases, taking the people that deeply understand the data, the systems they need to interface with, the UX design, because in this case, the AI could be becoming the new UI, and really understand the workflow, the human-computer interaction. And that's really the population that if we do those deeper layers in the stack right, we can expose the incredible value. So a combination of business governance around the use cases and then technology governance, really almost blurring the lines between how those work together, and then the legal work streams, the regulatory work streams, the ethics work streams, all the pieces that need to tie to be able for us to get this at scale. And of course, the talent and the focus on how do we bring our current workforce along and how do we think about the workforce of the future.
So Akshaya, kind of asking you the similar question, when you were running that part of Barclays, how did you bring your business leaders along? I mean, the technology part I can understand, but what was it that you saw resonated with them around the use of the word AI? Because often I see the moment you use the word AI with a business executive or a CEO, they say, oh, it's a technical thing, why don't you go talk to my CTO, right? Yeah. So did you experience that? And first, and second, were you able to overcome that, and if so, how?
I believe the best AI is when you see no AI. So, and I'll tell you why I'm saying that. You're right. that when you mention AI, oh, it's a technology matter. It is not. AI is a business opportunity. And I'll tell you a story. When I was running Barclays Wealth, we invited about 20 of our wealthiest customers to meet our new chairman, John McFarlane. And I got talking to two people, both in their mid-60s, both roughly similar net worth, a few hundred million. And one of them complained to me that we, as their bank, did not give them enough opportunities to make more money. The other was worried about negative interest rates. And I was on the taxi ride home, I was thinking, two guys, late 60s, worth whatever, 200 million, take a few million or two. One is extremely risk averse, and the other still wants to make money. They're at completely opposite ends of the risk spectrum. But we as a bank call them ultra high net worth. We put them in the same segment. We assign the same relationship manager or the banker to them. We serve them with the same set of products. We treat them in the same way. We invite them to the same parties. When we go there, we have the same conversation with them. Whereas, it just felt wrong. And I think if you approach it that way, whether it's AI or something else, it is a problem that needs to be solved. Now, as it happens, I think AI is a great solution. Because what you really need is segmentation at a level where it's really micro-segmentation, and you're building profiles of one, which is really what we are doing in Bridgeweave. And the fact that you're profiling a customer so intensely does not have to be visible to the customer. All the customer needs to perceive is that it's a logical conversation. It has some relevance to what he or she wants to talk about, and it produces a good outcome. And so that's one part of it. I think there's another element I want to pick up on, something that Laurie said, which is the regulators. And if you take the UK regulatory landscape, there is either investment advice or there is nothing. Now, we as a company, we have taken a position that we are providing information. It's highly technical, it's highly personalized, but it is information and it's not advice. We're not making a recommendation. We're not telling you it's good for you or not. We are presenting you information in a way that you can understand, and then you take the decision what to do with it. Now, the question is, at what point does personalization and more personalization and yet more personalization starts to look more and more like a personal recommendation? And if that happens, what is the regulatory view about it? So we are talking to the FCA in quite a lot of detail about it. But this morning when I was leaving home, my phone said, it's going to take you 37 minutes to get there. Traffic is light. Is that a personal recommendation? Is that advice? That's sort of what we're doing with investment information. Yeah. But I think it raises issues that are not covered by current regulation, because these technologies have not existed. These scenarios are not envisaged. So I think we need to take everybody along, not just within the organization, but very important stakeholders outside the organization as well.
So let's build on that point about issues that have not existed. I do believe that what we saw with Facebook and Cambridge Analytica is the beginning of an avalanche of issues. What happened in the social networks when you applied a little bit of, call it, learning and AI and fake news and all that stuff. These are systems that can be manipulated, will be manipulated, and I think there is a massive sort of onslaught of those things that's coming. It'll be a component of cybersecurity, but of a different type, where instead of hacking data, you're hacking experiences. Yes. Okay, so speak to us a little bit about your view, Akshaya, on responsible AI and why you think that is a topic that will start taking more and more attention, not just because people don't want to be sitting in Mark Zuckerberg's seat explaining stuff, but why else is responsible AI good for the business?
Look, I'm glad you brought it up, because for me, that notion of responsible AI is far more important than almost an AI itself. It doesn't matter the technology is at level 4 or level 5 or level 18. If you cannot trust it, it is useless. So trust is very important. And for me, trust is, in part, explainability. I want to be in control. I want to know. I want to get recommendations, and I want to get suggestions, and I want to get pointers from what the system is doing. But I want to know why it is saying something.
What about the other side of responsible AI, which is reflecting your values and ethics into the AI? Because just like you do in an employee's brain,
Yes.
your company values. How about reflecting your company's values and business policies into a digital brain? Is that a component too?
I think that is a vital component, and it flows with the personalization notion that we are talking about. And that's what makes it interactive and a learning kind of thing. So learn about me.
Yeah.
Don't just show me general garbage. Learn about me. Figure out what I like. Figure out what I want. Show me something that is relevant. Take my feedback. Learn more about me. And then when you show me something, explain it to me. Why am I seeing this?
And engage with me in a way that reflects your corporate values and corporate principles, isn't it? That's part of the brand. So Lori, I mean, I would love to know how JP Morgan looks at responsible AI with respect to your own ethics and values getting embedded into digital brains.
Yeah, I think it actually starts making sure our employees understand, as we think about this, what is the value? We have to think about the psychology around it, the social implications around it, and we've seen companies stumble where the culture and mission and vision of the company isn't reflected in the decisions that are being made. And so that is number one important. Then also to all of our clients and customers, making sure that the way we operate and how decisions are being made, whether we're using an intelligent assistant or an employee on the other end of the phone, that it is representative of the culture. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we are a business of trust.
Yep.
And so maintaining that trust is incredibly important in whatever technology that we leverage. When we talk about this issue of explainability, just to go a little bit deeper to understand that we use predictive models today in our business, pretty quite sophisticated in the markets, businesses, et cetera. And so you go through a model governance review. So having to go through this process is not abnormal, but it's a sophistication that we need to think about. How do you think about a model governance review when you've reviewed the model and the model continues to evolve and change?
Yeah.
And so you have to change that thought process a little bit about how do you think about a model or explainability that actually can help you think about that. So even into a consumer, as we have to prove, how did we make our decision? The ability to be able to do that. So I think the final aspect I would say is we also want to think about, again, workforce of the future. We think it's incredibly important not only serving the needs of our clients and customers, but serving the needs of our communities. And so taking a very proactive stance as a company to think about workforce of the future and not only preparing our internal workforce, but in our communities. How do we prepare the workforce in all the geographies we operate for those jobs of the future, which this is going to be a great opportunity to do that.
That's wonderful. I tell you again, can't thank you guys enough for taking the time and sharing some of the insight. I learned a few things which I'll follow up with you after that myself. And for those of you that you want to follow up and ask more questions of them, we're going to have a small breakout session, and I think that's about the time we've been allotted. So thank you again to both of you for participating, and all of you have a great session.